Good morning and welcome to Women of Consciousness podcast. Today, I'm really excited to announce that I have a guest with me, Liz from wildembodiment.com. We're going to be giving an amazing astrology update because it is a brand new astrological year and so much is happening. Um, so, thanks for joining, Liz.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Um, we'll have to the audio. Just gonna have to mute.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. Okay. So we're gonna start off with the current eclipse that happened with the full moon on the Virgo full moon Pisces sun axis. Um, so I always feel like eclipses are portals and you kind of feel it beforehand. And it's like, oh, here we are. The eclipse happened. You go through this gateway. You're kind of in this wonky energy for like maybe 2 weeks and then have the next eclipse. And then it's kind of like the exit gateway as stuff continues again to like shift. So that's how I always kind of feel and see them and work with them. But Liz, I'd love to know just like your take on eclipses and what this recent Virgo full moon kind of brought us into the gateway of.
Yeah. Are you hearing me okay?
Oh yeah, perfect.
Okay, good. Okay, cool. This is great. um, yeah, so for me, I definitely eclipses are portals, right? And what does that mean? To me, it's like we're really given an opportunity to move forward into whatever our, new reality is or whatever reality that we're projecting. And um I think of eclipses as acceleration points.
Mm,
So like when you're driving on the road and suddenly maybe the road clears, there's no stoplights or stop signs, and you're able to kind of hit the gas a little bit.
nice.
They always feel a little bit like that to me. And the more that we can actually use that energy consciously to empower us, or whatever the specific energies of the particular eclipse are inviting, seems to really be able to help us move forward, into our path a little bit
Mm,
more. And I think this particular eclipse that we're just coming out of, it's hard to tell because it's impacting me so intensely on a personal level that I feel like sometimes it's hard as an astrologer, right, to separate our own like personal experiences from the collective.
right.
And there's of course so much happening in the collective
Mm,
that it's being mirrored back to us. Um, One of the things, and I'd love to hear your perspective on this too, is with that Pisces energy. And of course, this last eclipse was a full moon lunar eclipse in Virgo. So the axis is the Virgo Pisces axis, and that has a lot to do with our healing journey, right? Like Virgo's how we live in the world, our mundane realities. It's like the little rituals that make up the total story of our lives. Um, and Pisces is sort of the magic that comes from those rituals, right?
yeah.
And Pisces is, I always think of Pisces as like the whole ocean, where like
Yes.
Virgo's like all the individual drops, and Pisces is like this whole glorious ocean. And we get to choose when we're swimming in this axis, like, are we a drop or are we an ocean?
Mm,
We choose to see how um, our like little drop is also a part of and mirrors that
mm,
whole, right? Um, and of course, I think what we're seeing is in many ways like what's happening out in the larger world, and what do we have control and order over within our own
mm.
drop to
Right.
contribute to that.
I love that. No, that's funny too because like the eclipses always impact my sleep for certain. I'm usually like wide awake in the middle of the night for hours, just laying there. And with this, because I am Pisces sun, it was really very peaceful and tranquil. It felt very weird almost because it's not the eclipse energy I'm used to. But I remember laying in bed at night and feeling like I literally was an ocean, and then that Virgo structure. It was like, what do I like? So, I mean, it was very kind of out of body, sleepy realm, just kind of coming in and out of sleep consciousness and recognizing that like something in that deep state was really in this cosmic ocean and was really looking at what it wanted to pull to organize for structure to create into the physical. So, I was very much going through that in my dream cycles, as you just described it. So that's awesome.
I completely relate. I feel like I haven't slept completely properly up until maybe 2 days ago, like leading up to the eclipse, and then a day or two after, it was still like this, just like restlessness, and
Mm,
then followed by these like deep sleeps, but with like a lot of sort of like dream content just
yeah,
whirling around like
yeah.
what is ready to actually emerge from the unconscious into our ordinary and day-to-day
Mm,
lives. um so yeah, I pay a lot of attention to our dreams, and I think this eclipse in particular probably brought a lot of that out for
mm,
people in general,
mm.
if I were to guess. So
Yeah, absolutely. It makes sense with the Pisces, dreamer, like dreamy escapism.
there's so much of an energy of like chaos versus order, or like
Mm,
surrender versus control. And I say versus, but it doesn't have to be, are we balancing those energies, or are they like opposing each other? Are they like in competition?
mm,
Um, is there a part of us that's needing to step more into our Virgo, polarity, or is there a part of us that's needing to step more into, surrender more into the Pisces aspects,
right.
where it's this like locus of control is it feels really potent at this particular eclipse. Like
Mm,
um, so many people that I speak to are completely flooded, right? And of course, like that's incredibly archetypal too. Like we're talking about Pisces ocean, but we've got Saturn in Pisces,
mm.
got the North Node in Pisces. We've got Neptune, which rules Pisces at the last degree of Pisces, ready to completely switch signs altogether. And we're being completely flooded by all of this unprocessed stuff, and we're seeing it out in the world, via
Mm,
social media and like, these modalities that we have of connection.
yeah.
So yeah.
Mm. Um, I guess I'm curious, like maybe for people that with Pisces, right? I think it's like the harder kind of darker elements to it is like really addiction and the escapism. So I think like that's important for people to recognize too, with all the energies coming up and so much Pisces. Check your coping mechanisms, check your self-care, make sure you're not trying to escape from reality in unhealthy ways, because that is the darker side of this Pisces energy, and looking at how you can, like you said, bring a balance and physically create like what you want to enjoy, rather than just running and ending up in like consequences of that, right? Because there's always the ripple effects. So yeah.
Oh, 100% that like escapist. I mean, I've been feeling personally like some of that, like just wanting to like chill, you know what I mean? And like it doesn't matter like what's happening out there.
Yeah.
Um and it's like a fine line, like between part of escapism, part of the fantasy, and dissociating is like a big part of that. Um one of I think the ways that we do that the most in our culture these days is with screens.
Yeah.
We are creating fantasy worlds and fantasy images that a lot of us like find ourselves living through our media, social image, more than actually grounded into our lives.
Yeah.
And I think we're being really, I think that's part of the disconnection that we really experience, is not just like escaping via like drugs or alcohol or whatever modality, but also like actually living in sort of a fantasy bubble of like who we are.
Yeah.
It's been this, I've been, as somebody who I use social media, and I love social media, it's been like really helpful. I've made like so many connections over
Mm,
the years, people I really have become very real friends and real community with. And yet there's always an element to it of like not really knowing what's actually real, because it's all information, and it's
right.
all like kind of a linear logical kind of information too.
Mm,
um, and we're a little bit inundated, especially I feel like these last like couple months, like there's been this inundation of information. And it's really interesting to me how the Pisces, like Mercury has gone retrograde from Pisces and back into Aries,
mm,
and turning direct in Aries. I think I said that backwards. Like Mercury retrograde's gone from Aries into Pisces. We'll turn direct in Pisces to come back into Aries, and how that particular transit relates to, along with the Venus retrograde, like
mm,
how that has also been an influence within this last lunar eclipse. And that idea of like the information that we're consuming not necessarily having a clear defined reality to it either, in a sense,
right.
if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think it's getting harder too to tell like the truth of sources. Things are just getting so bogged down with like AI and all these things now that I think you really have to be careful and fact check, because so many headlines and things are just popping up. Um,
AI is a good, like a good point with that too, because
mm,
they're like, exactly, it's like a fantasy reality. And artists that make art, I mean, that takes years in many cases, and like skills to develop, and it comes through, I would say, a very Virgo
mm,
type of practice, the details and refining a skill.
right, perfection.
Those things are very Virgo, and then the
Yeah.
actual art of it being like Pisces. And
Yeah.
having the creative, inspirational,
Mm,
like a world that maybe isn't real, but like reflects, like on some level, some mirror of our soul. Um, that's been meticulously created, through our Virgo sensibilities. But now with AI, it's like just push some buttons and put in some prompts, and we have access to this. Like,
mm,
you know, it feels very ungrounded to me,
yeah.
a lot of it, and I try to not be negative. I think I have a healthy like curiosity, but and like hope for what some of these technologies could bring. But I also like really recognize the ways that we're maybe losing track of certain aspects of our humanness
Mm, yeah.
and all of that. So
Yeah. Absolutely. All right. I was thinking about the retrogrades and you started talking about them. It's funny because I have Venus in Aries and my in my birth chart, Mercury, it depends on where I go to because it will say 29 degrees Aquarius or it will say 0 degrees on Pisces. So I always think Hermes just likes to mess and he's probably in both of them. So it's kind of funny, like Venus and Mercury are both like at my kind of natal return in these retrogrades. And I honestly haven't been feeling Hermes as much. Mercury. I have a very strong connection with that energy, but I would say like the Venus has been hitting me,
mm,
and it's definitely been the relationships, right? Looking at that, and I think it's about kind of that Aries energy of knowing my worth and my value and kind of recognizing like old patterns that really brought on a lot of pain or wounded masculine, wounded feminine energies, and recognizing like after years of work and healing and growth, that it's a new level where it's like I refuse to kind of be in those older situations. Um, so I've kind of found that interesting and fascinating because in the past I never really felt like Venus was a strong retrograde cycle for me. I know it's only like every 18 months. So she kind of tends to like throw in loops for, relationships and finances. Um, but yeah, I'm just kind of curious your take on the eclipses having retrogrades kind of going going off in the meantime too.
It's a wild cosmic roller coaster right now. I feel
Mhm.
like so your natal Venus is being like crisscrossed by the
Yes. Yeah,
current.
because she's at like 15 degrees.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. See, that would definitely. I'd be surprised if you didn't feel an impact of that. Um, yeah. I mean, I guess what I'm overall feeling with this particular eclipse like is that we've been in like some real sort of muddy murky waters, right? Like
Mhm.
Pisces is just we've got this like kind of Aries energy that's like inspiring us to try to start to wake up, and like the sun just entered Aries with the equinox yesterday. Venus was in Aries, Mercury in Aries. But there's still all this Piscean energy. It's like all the planets are sort of clustered, together in this particular area, but they're straddling Pisces, Aries, and it's just a lot of like stops and starts and like endings and beginnings, and we're really looking at like what needs to be released so that we can more firmly move into this new cycle. And yet it feels like we're really having, I think collectively, a very difficult time. I think, especially those of us who've maybe been doing this work or paying attention to this or, preparing, so to speak, for like a new
Mm.
paradigm for a while.
Yeah.
um, I think it can feel a little bit even startling to feel where there's still layers of stuff
Mm.
that's being worked through at like a deeper level to help us like really let go of the old shore
Yeah.
and let ourselves, I was talking to somebody the other day, and it's like, the choice is to continue to try to hold on to the shore, or to really let go and trust whatever happens, like,
Mm.
which might feel like drowning, right?
Right.
So much of like Pisces is about the dissolution of all that we've created.
Right.
And it's like forcing all of the things that we still cling to and grasp to as like normal.
Mm.
um, which is all that Virgo energy, right? Is like, this is our normal day to day, take it for granted, like, mundane, boring lives. We brush our teeth and we, cook meals, and we have these jobs. And Pisces, and this Pisces energy is sort of washing a lot of that away. And then meanwhile, we've got this like Aries energy that's trying to like pull us into something new,
Mhm.
but I
Yeah.
truly, I feel like as these planets, progress throughout this year, this is such a big year in general, and March being um, such a crucial month within the whole year. And the more that the energy starts to move toward fire, I think we'll start to find, more of that like less like adrift at sea kind of energy, and more
Mm.
like kind of swimming for our lives, so to speak, is kind of what it feels like. But I think these retrogrades at a personal level are showing us like, okay, where are we maybe feeding the wrong, the information machine? Where
Yeah.
are we like clinging to relationships that aren't actually aligned with what we want to create? Where are we like still caught up in our emotional attachments through Venus, or where are we still caught up in our like belief systems
Mm.
via Mercury? And how do we confront those? These Cazimis the next couple weeks with both Venus and Mercury going retrograde through the sun.
Mm.
As the sun moves forward and the Venus and Mercury will go retrograde, I think really offers a chance to like renew ourselves
Mm.
energetically, both in terms of like love and our perception. Um, and allows us really, I think it's like the phoenix kind of like burning up and becoming ashes, so that
Ah,
that
yeah.
fertile compost can now be used to create something new. But the next few weeks leading up to the solar eclipse feel incredibly potent in terms of our like personal processes.
Mm,
And then I think with this next solar eclipse, it's like waking up the energy on a much bigger level.
yeah.
Yeah. I know a lot of us like with this like I mean, I don't know. It's again sometimes hard to separate what's personal in my world and what's what everybody's feeling. But such is the nature of astrology, right? Like we all have our own chart that's like
Right.
influenced by like the transits that are happening. It's always good to know how the transits are influencing you individually. But
Mm,
what I'm seeing is a lot of people that like want to kind of step more into like a new world or a new consciousness or a new dream, right?
mm, yeah.
But don't necessarily know where to begin and don't necessarily know like where to put. It's like taking very tentative steps. Like we don't know where to put our feet to get to like
Right.
the next stone. There's like a movie, there's probably 10 movies with it, but it's like where you step on a stone and it immediately starts sinking and you have to like jump to the next one. It feels like a lot of that right now.
Yeah, that's for sure. A lot of uncertainty.
A lot of uncertainty and it feels like really what we need to do is maybe just sink into the chaos of it.
Yeah, I think that's kind of inevitable. Trust, right? Trust the unknown. And that's part of that rebirth process when you are shedding and letting go. You just, I think after so many cycles of it, that's where that resiliency comes in because you just know, like, all right, it's just it sucks in the point. This hurts, but it's gonna shift me and move me. And eclipses, right? Destiny, rulers of destiny and fate.
Yeah.
So they're going to be big game changers to kind of, help you go where you're supposed to go, and stop holding yourself back. And I think, especially too, the more that we hear the call, but like let the ego fears keep us limited, the universe just kind of intensifies its call and doesn't give a crap about our ego fears.
Right.
Um, it's
Because
like,
we're just these tiny drops in this whole ocean. It's like the ego is just that.
exactly. So it's like, realize that you're a wave, not a drop. And like,
Exactly.
yeah.
That's exactly it. And it's so hard for the ego that wants to hold on to its sense of specialness,
Mm,
separateness, that like I'm the one who has to do the thing and I have to show up and I have to like fix all the karma that like, or the other way around. Like I just want to experience pleasure and power and
mm,
we can get real caught up in our ego stories, whether we're, whatever side of the spectrum we might find ourselves to be. But yeah, the nature of the ego really functions by a separating mechanism, right? It's like to create an other, to see ourselves as separate from reality, or from the world, or from everything in it. But really, like we're all one big soup.
right.
And the more there's a the concept of Indra's net is coming into my mind right now, which is um, I probably won't describe it accurately, but it's this, this web of consciousness with all these like individual nodes. And it's like we all have our little node in this web, but we're
Mm,
all like infinitely connected as well.
yeah, absolutely. Oh, yeah, definitely a lot happening. So what the next one is the solar eclipse on the 29th, with the new moon, which we will get to see here in our northeastern location. I think we get like 80 or 90% of the totality.
That's awesome. I don't think I realized that.
Yeah, it's supposed to be like crack of dawn sunrise,
Oh my
that
God.
Saturday
How
morning.
how metaphoric is that?
I know,
Like
right? So at the rising, it's just gonna get darker. That's kind of cool. I'm really hoping that I can see it from my yard.
I mean, like, what a symbol for like bridging the worlds,
Mhm,
and again, like Pisces being that void energy,
mhm.
and it's like everything goes going into that void and dissolving and then reemerging with this like Aries, like
Yeah,
fresh, independent, like renewed self.
Yeah, absolutely. It really totally is like the death, and rebirth, reincarnation
Mhm.
kind of, right, where you shed and transform, transmute, into like the new.
Yeah. And it feel I mean it just it's that's what it feels like personally, via these Mercury, Venus that are, doing this retrograde thing during these eclipses, but then so much collectively too. I mean, Saturn in Pisces is like, I keep referring to it as like trying to build castles of sand, trying to like create structures, or, we build something up just to watch the ocean take it away.
Mhm.
Um, and of course, we've got Neptune entering Aries, which is,
Oh, yeah.
pretty. I mean, that's a huge transit, really. So, um, I mean,
Yeah, the last time that
Neptune,
happened was in the 1800s, right? Like
yeah,
18 something.
yeah, it was active. I want to say during the French Revolution. Um, I have to double check my notes. I write these notes, and I'm as for an astrologer, I'm actually not very good with dates.
No, I get it.
I'm like, I can't remember these things. Um, this upcoming solar eclipse is an interesting one because there's so much like that push pull energy feels really alive.
Mm,
With we've got Venus Mercury retrograde. At that point, they'll be crossing. You know, toward Pisces. We've got Neptune a day after the eclipse entering Aries, like winding down its time and entering Aries for the first time. Um, Saturn in Pisces, the North Node is still in Pisces. Um, and of course, the solar eclipse, with the sun and moon conjunct in Aries, is a really like that's it's really pushing us forward now, like
mm.
to take, I think, bold steps into this sort of new paradigm. Um, and I think we've been really dancing on the edge of it, and I think humans are really good at needing, like, we like our comfort zones,
Yeah, definitely.
really like our comfort zones, and this Aries energy feels like it's pushing us to wake up. It's like the alarm clock going
Yeah.
off. And I feel like if you're listening, you've been hearing it for a while. It's hard to not hear it right now,
Yeah.
I think. But this alarm, I think with this Aries solar eclipse, it's just that much louder.
Mm.
And to the point where we can't lay in bed and hit snooze again.
Yeah, it's time to get up and move.
Time to
Do
get up and
something.
move and take steps toward what we want to create.
Mm.
And of course, Aries is the god of war, um, but it's also like the emergence of spring. It's these beautiful plants, like baby sprouts, pushing their way up through frozen ground to like greet the
Yeah.
sun in the spring. There's life and fertility and like hope and inspiration that
Mm.
comes with this Aries energy. And but we can also get real into the like aggressive, impulsive, like kind of like I don't know, like asserting ourselves would be a nice way to put it. But
Mm.
but the energy feels real, like it's shaking us awake. And yet, what's interesting to me about an eclipse in Aries is that Mars is still in Cancer.
Mm.
So the ruler of the Aries eclipse is still treading water
Mm.
in Cancer, and we still have these North Node and Saturn and in Pisces, and these retrogrades are still happening. So as much as we're wanting to like inspire to step forward, it still feels like we're kind of like navigating these stormy seas,
Yeah.
and it just feels like we have to be even more like um, aware, I guess,
Mm.
and like in our power around how we're choosing to navigate these storms
Mm.
happening.
Yeah. I loved what you had written in your recent article about Neptune and Aries and the warrior, and how it's saying like Aries reveals the sheer determination of the soul like to be born, and that really we need to ground our positions with intention instead of reaction.
Mhm.
Which I've definitely have been feeling that a lot. It's like I'm just not going to react at this point. I'm just, you know what I mean. I'm done reacting. Especially like that narcissist kind of mentality in people. It's like I see your game, I know it, I'm not responding. Um, so I think that is really kind of cool. Where a part of that like alarm clock mentality where you're like, we know this and we have to like, you can't just lay there and avoid it anymore. So it's really about recognizing that we can get the upper hand by really being in alignment with our intentions. And I don't think that is mostly in the collective's radar, right? Their intentions is just to get up, be able to go to the job, come home to like the work life, family life balance, and just try and have a good day. I think if you can just have a good day, that's like most intention setting. Um, but then when something gets thrown in there for some kind of challenge or trigger, that's really meant for you to recognize a pattern, to recognize a wound, to be able to, like you said, get out of comfort zones, find a new path that's more for your higher good. But we just keep reacting rather than like stopping, stepping back and looking at what is really happening here and why does this keep kind of coming up for us, right? So that we can change our engagement with life and situations because we are co-creators. And I think a lot of people are still stuck in the mentality that like life is unfair and it just happens to you and you don't actually have a choice or a role. And that's really I think damaging to like think and be stuck in that mindset because then you're just bringing that reality into materialism. So that is going to be, you know, how you view life is it's just out to get you.
I think you're right, absolutely right on
Yeah.
with that. And interesting. I mean, I would say that's another aspect of like the Virgo Pisces is this like victim martyr
Hmm.
dynamic that can come up, right? And
Yeah.
it's like, are we co-creators or are we just like passive, like experiencers in this life dream, you know?
Yeah.
And it makes me think about this idea of like not just like co-creating, but also like consciously dreaming. Like what is it and what is it that we want to create? And you know, what one thing I hear a lot from people is like it just is what it is. Like we live in capitalism, it is what it is, you know.
Mm.
It's like, but like if it is what it is, like disempowers you from dreaming that something more is actually possible. I was reading something, and I won't remember the person's name. Unfortunately, it was on Substack, but an article that kind of talked about the difference between like a culture of survival and economies of survival and cultures of well-being and you know, economies of well-being, and the difference really being that we don't have to compete for survival. We
Right.
can actually co-create, but we have to be willing first to dream that and believe it's even possible and to want it. And I
Mm.
think there's a lot of us who want it, but don't necessarily believe it's possible. And then we've got these sort of narcissistic energies that feel like they're very opportunistically, you know, seizing control of
Mm.
the awakening consciousness, the consciousness that's trying to awaken, rather,
Mm.
or is awakening, which I should say. Like there is a consciousness that's awakening, and it feels like there's these entities that are trying to suppress that awakening
Hmm.
so that they can maintain their control over it. Um,
Absolutely.
but I think that the world dream more and more, especially now, like with the internet, this is the beauty of technology, is like we can be aware of what's happening in the Congo or in Palestine or in Ukraine or in China or in you know, we can see all around the world um, you know, what's happening, and we can feel connected to people and cultures and places that we haven't been able to, like in ways that we haven't been able to historically.
Mm.
Um, and I think in many ways, like what we're experiencing is sort of a disillusionment. But if we were able, I think, to harness that energy to be creative, like we would find more energy, like to like birth this sort of new paradigm that we, I think, is very possible and very emergent. And fundamentally, I think that's, really what's going on with like Neptune in Aries. Once Saturn enters Aries, it is sort of this struggle for survival, like in the same way that, we have, it takes great energy for these plants to like push against the frozen ground. It takes amazing power and strength and resilience for us to, emerge out of the void, and again, like Aries is that god of war, and that god of war is like expressing itself. It's like it's right to live, it's right to exist, it's I amness,
Mm,
into like out of this like Piscean void that's like, nothingness. And it's like suddenly there emerges this beautiful light of like I am, and this self. And
mm,
it's like that rising swell of energy and freedom and self-expression. Like that energy can't be stifled.
right.
We're really getting with Neptune in Aries like that potential of this like wave of renewed consciousness. And like, Pisces, like again, like the ocean, like Neptune being like, the ocean of consciousness. And with Aries, we're ready to like claim for
Mm,
ourselves like who we really are, but
yeah,
not just like at the level of the ego, the level of like our embodied soul consciousness
right.
for all of us in Earth, and really even beyond. You know?
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. I feel that. I feel right in alignment with that. And I think the way collectively we're having like so much kind of crumble and fall apart because of this whole age of Aquarius and trying to move us into more awakening. I think that in itself right there is where people are going to start recognizing like I'm not I'm not a resource, right? Like my light being inside this body is not a resource to be drilled into and tapped and exhausted. And I think we're just really like tired and fed up with the way that we aren't seen as human beings with emotions and lives, but just as this commodity to give.
Yeah.
And I think that right there is going to be the frustration point because I know I'm feeling it. I know I've been, I don't want to be in the public schools. I would much rather be doing this work with helping and teaching people about right psychology and trauma and how to connect with plant medicine and healing and all of these beautiful things that are more of that kind of Pisces dreamy life. Because I'm always fantasizing like I feel annoyed. I'm like, this is it. This is what we've created. And you are all just okay with waking up at like 6 a.m. to like run out the door. I'm like, I'm over it. I want my mornings. I want to meditate and relax and journal and ease into my day. Like I don't want to feel like I'm just tapped into all these machines and being drained.
100%. And I really hope that like this sort of consolidation of power that is attempting to happen, like the harder things get for your average person, the more like people wake up and be like, what's going on? Like this isn't okay.
Right.
There's unfortunately, I think one of the problems of our human condition that we're really struggling against is this sort of complacency,
Mm,
this sort of like existential like, and part of it is a like a low grade survival mode where for, and I'm speaking really like specifically about like, my experience and people like me. There's people in this world who are suffering exponentially, and like
mm,
who are already like literally living the apocalypse. like
right.
to say like, oh, I'm just going to get up and go to work every day, and that this is this good enough? Like that's actually like we're very privileged to even have that,
Right.
in our lives right now. Like good job. We did well on the birth lottery, so to speak. But that being said, it's like there is already like the absolute bottom has absolutely fallen out on so many lives
Mm,
globally. Um, and now, it's hard because to me it makes the complacency that much harder to
mm,
bear, because it's like we can't just tune out. Like we can't,
right.
how to witness like all this like incredible suffering, and even feel that suffering, and then to just like not want to do something about it is I think more and more people are waking up to the problem of that,
Yeah.
to needing to, and it is via our own suffering. Like there's definitely an aspect of it that's like, I have to be the one to suffer before I'm willing to like get up off my couch and make changes. But I also think, probably again, like back to the internet and to some degree, like I think we're really waking up in terms of like our capacity for like that collective empathic, like consciousness that unites us all. That like
Mm.
when somebody suffers, even if it's around the world, like that's us. Like we're not
Right.
separate from what's happening, in these different places of the world. That
Mm.
our lives are, intertwined innately, as part of this human web. So
Yeah, absolutely.
I
And
think
I think,
I think the solar eclipse is going to really like, I think, start to be the force that really shakes us out of that complacency. And like I said, like this alarm clock kind of, it's like we can't hit snooze anymore. We have to wake up. And for
mm,
some of us, it is absolutely like it needs to be in their front yard before they do anything about it. But and for those of us who have been, you know, looking for ways for a long time to be of service, or to support, I think that we're going to find ourselves even more needed.
yeah, absolutely. I agree. I think that's why there's definitely been right stages of awakening, like they say waves and things like that to kind of prepare the structure that's being built energetically. And it's been hard for us, right? Like here we are, just wake up at one point. It's like, oh, wait a minute, I'm supposed to be the bridge. I'm the energetic link to like collapsing and rebuilding. Okay, sure. There's no manual. I just got to figure this out with my soul. Okay, thanks.
Well, that's just it. And I think that's the thing with the North Node in Pisces, right? It's like we don't know how to do this.
Right.
Like, and it's I found myself saying so many times, like, I just want a leader.
Yeah.
Like, I just want like an empowered leader that is real and honest, that I can trust,
Yeah.
and get behind, and give my energy fully to that. But this feeling of like, oh wait, I have to be that leader. Like it's entirely scary to be the first one to like walk off the cliff,
Right.
and I think that we're all going through that in our own way. Like
Yeah.
we're at some point, each of us having to like walk off the cliff in our own lives, and like just take the trip into the unknown.
Yep.
And then from there, hopefully, we find each other.
Yeah. It seems to be working so far. Oh, but absolutely, it's been a heck of a journey.
It's been a heck of a
So
journey. And
yeah.
This Venus retrograde is really, I think you mentioned it earlier, like we're reassessing our values,
Mhm.
like what do we value, not just in terms of like our culture, but like at the very intimate level of our personal lives.
Right.
Like, you know,
Yeah. That's spiritual warrior, right?
yeah,
Mm,
that's, with this Neptune in Aries, I feel that we're all being called to that archetype.
yeah.
Um, what does it mean to be a spiritual warrior, and um, I think it's different, a little different for everybody, and there's so many beautiful examples. You have Rama and Hanuman and Krishna, and all these different cultures have examples of the archetypes of the spiritual warrior. And um, what does it mean to actually like live that way? And I think for me, when I really sit with like what that looks like, it's to be willing to confront first the enemy within ourselves.
Mm,
And when I say enemy, I don't necessarily mean the part of us that's like even overtly, you know, aggressive or challenging us or whatever, but like our emotional attachments,
mm,
our belief systems, our fear of the other, the things that we maybe like cling to as that safe shore that prevent us from actually surrendering to a deeper awareness of who we are,
mm.
the whole ocean, right?
Right.
Clinging to the drop instead of just being one with the whole.
Right.
I'd
Yeah,
love
there's
to hear what it looks like for you, the idea of spiritual warrior.
well, for me, it's definitely been that like resiliency of kind of tired, right? Like I'm exhausted. My ego is like, I just want peace. I don't want to do this. But there's this part, and I really do feel like it's the light of the soul. It's that essence, right? That created this part of me, um, that itself is going through its own evolutionary consciousness. Um, and I don't that's kind of far out there in some ways, so I don't wanna go too far. But I think it's the fact, like what you were talking about earlier, that there are darker energetic forces, and I think that could be even discussed and talked about in a lot of details of, like, exactly what is that and why does it want all this control? But it does feel like there's a dark, heavy energy that is, created the container, right, and now has constricted and restricted all of the flow of the feminine, right, all of that creativity that truly is like the goddess feminine. And this is where I kind of see like the whole patriarchy, kind of being stemming from all of that. But I think it's about knowing like there's this truth inside that we all have, the answers that we really are seeking about our own origins. So not giving away power, that's a huge one right now that I recognize. Um, and I sure you must too, because we both do, community events, teaching classes, working with, astrology, tarot, oracle. And a lot of times people, they just want you to give them all the answers. They want you to like tell them all of their problems and all of the solutions. And it's that sense of giving away your own power to other people to fix it, to do it, to think it, to dream it, to build it.
Right, right.
And then just making excuses why, like, oh, I can't, or I don't know, or I'm not sure. But it's like you have to start like powering yourself to find the answers, to find the solutions, to go to a YouTube video and try and build it yourself, whatever it may be. But I think like that's a huge part of the spiritual warrior is it's like I know who I am
Mhm.
and I have something worth fighting for. And it's not to fight to hurt and harm other people, but it's to fight for something that's so beautiful and so worth creating and protecting and saving. Um, so like right, our lands, our national parks, like for me, I feel like that's definitely a spiritual warrior, because we have to protect land, we have to protect animals that don't have voices. Um, so I definitely see like resiliency, like keep going, even though it sucks and it's hard and you want to tap out. But then finding like strength in your own empowerment. Um,
Yeah. It feels like, really it's personal sacrifice for the greater good,
mm,
letting go of the sort of smallness of our own, whether it's, glory or safety or desire, all these things, and actually showing up, you know, to live in true service to the whole, like at the very core of our being.
mm,
I feel like that's this sort of Neptune and Aries energy. Like, Neptune is so much about like the sacrifice of the ego, but Aries is like, I am, so you have this like conflicting, like it seems like they're this conflicting energy, but they're so closely linked, um, in terms of like this energy that wants to be birthed. Like there's
mm,
this, it's like this energy that's coming like out of, the dark and into the light, and like here I am.
mm.
Within that, all of the ways that we like you're saying, like show up to feed like life,
Yeah.
right? And like what you're saying, like it, yeah, like we can like go about our lives like that's just how it is, or I just have to like keep the ball rolling. And I have a lot of compassion for that. We're in the same situation, like we've
Mm.
got, you know we need to put food on the table. We want to keep the electric bill paid, and that requires our jobs, like,
Right.
so we're all in this kind of same boat together. And on that level, like how do we keep our like lives going and keep ourselves somewhat safe and fed and medicine where medicine needs to be, and yet still show up for this new paradigm, this like
Mm,
new vision or version of reality that's possible.
mm,
um I think for me it's like the spiritual warrior really invites us to let go of our own like ego's preference,
mm.
you know, the image that we've created for ourselves, all these attachments to like this is how the world should be, or
Yeah.
to step into the unknown in a way that allows something new to emerge.
Mm, absolutely. I think it's exciting. Like, I don't know. I remember like years ago in my, earlier spiritual awakening days when it did feel like very, like a baby ego and like not having any idea how to navigate any of this. But now it's like it's exciting when you can really think about like, man, what kind of life could I really have if it wasn't just like working to pay the bills, like you said, like because I think at the end of the day, I'm always trying to go back to gratitude, right? Knowing like no matter what challenges arrive, everything I need like is there for me in that moment, right? Staying in that now. I'm always provided for. So it's, like staying in that now. But definitely I think getting excited, we don't have to let it scare us, the unknown.
Mhm.
I think this is where we can let our imaginations kind of be like the inner child when we were, really little and we could make up amazing, fun worlds of play and get lost in them. If we could all just kind of, I think, put that energy into the collective.
Yeah, I
Uh,
think I think play is
yeah,
absolutely like the medicine, right?
yeah, yes,
Imagination. I mean, how Neptunian is that, right?
right.
You know, our and Saturn and Pisces like are dreaming of a new structure and playing and imagining
Mhm.
possibilities here. They might not feel concrete and grounded, but that work will be, coming later on down the road to actually build and implement the structures of like this,
Right.
this new vision of reality. But we have to dream it, and we have to dream it openly. And I think part of the play is maybe just getting together with other people and being like, what do you want your world to look like? What do you
Right.
making art, and getting into sort of a more community collaborative spirit around things.
Yeah.
And I feel, I think we're gonna kind of see that as a very practical reality as well. um, how do we create networks of mutual aid to support each other, through some of these changes? How do we feed each other, get back
Mm,
to, some of our core connections to nature, right? Like our
right.
the food and the water that we need.
Mm,
All of those things. But how do we do that from a position of playfulness,
right.
like inspiration, rather than from a fear-based like prepper mentality?
Right, right, the doomsday. Oh,
not
man.
knocking not knocking being very prepared. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah,
But this idea that there's like this threatening other that's going to come to our front door and like take everything, whether that other is the government or some neighbor or like some force far outside of ourselves. It's like all of these aspects like belong to consciousness, right?
mm,
Even the darkest, most terrifying like things that we can project still belong to the whole of us. Like it's not separate from us.
right.
We've gotten very conditioned to living in the frame of the ego that teaches us to see everything as separate.
Yeah.
And I think, fundamentally, I think that's some of the work that we really have to do. Even like, just Democrats versus Republicans or whatever. It's like we're so used to seeing like they think like that, they're the other.
Mhm.
And like the reality is we don't even know what's real. Like we just have like clickbait headlines that are like telling us what to think. So when we get back to, you know, a more grounded reality and get back to maybe looking at our neighbors or things that are challenging as something within ourselves rather than something that's here to harm us,
Mm,
you know, maybe we can start to strengthen and rebuild some of the community systems and, you know, connections that will really help us thrive.
yeah, absolutely. The work always starts within, right? Change the
Really.
world by changing yourself.
Isn't it funny
Absolutely.
how it just seems like it always comes back to
Yeah.
that?
As within, so without. Like, I don't know how many times I'm like, "Oh, yep, okay, I feel it. I'm there." I'm like, "I got it."
Like, how many schools of thought or ways of looking at it through astrology or tarot or, you know,
Yeah.
quantum physics do we have to like explore to just be like the work lies within? So
Right? Absolutely. And, there's always so much so many different angles with the work.
yeah,
And that's what the astrology is there to help us with, right, though? That's why a lot of these shifts and alignments, they're, cosmic partners, really, right? These waves of energy, we can surf them, swim in them, drown in them, but they're still gonna come to aid us.
and it's all that play. It's all that
Yeah.
same Lila, whether we're surfing or swimming or drowning.
Yeah.
It's still to the, you know, the non-dual self here, not
Yeah.
to our ego selves, right? But to the non-dual self, it's all play.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, we're coming up on our hour. Love to thank the listeners for hanging out with us, and yeah, lots of astrology updates, and lots more to come this year. March is definitely a big month, like you said. So, if you're shedding, if you're letting go right now, have self care, self compassion, self love. You know, it's okay. It's part of the process. And just, I would say, get curious, get playful about those new beginnings, right?
Yeah.
Just see what you can create, see what the universe has in store for you. But yeah, if you have any final words, Liz.
I was just to say that let go of that comfortable shore and exactly what you said. Let's try to embrace the playful side of things that
Yeah,
is possible. So
yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much. I'm really just so grateful for your awareness and your education, like right with the eclipses, to be able to bring that to the audience. Liz at wildembodiment.com. So you can definitely check out her website and check out her offerings. And hopefully, who knows if, yeah, we'll talk and see if maybe something hooks up in the future.
yeah, this has been
But
great. This has been fun. Thank you
yeah,
again.
it's been a lot of fun. Yeah. Well, thank you for being here. Have a great day, everybody.